The silence in the deep core of the Sith Citadel was not the absence of sound, but rather a profound, heavy quiet, like the pressure of the ocean at its greatest depths. It was a silence filled with the latent hum of ancient energies, the distant thrum of advanced machinery maintaining the colossal fortress, and the almost imperceptible whispers of the dark side of the Force, omnipresent and ever watchful. Within his Spartan, obsidian-walled chambers, the young apprentice, Valerius, lay upon his meditation slab, a slab carved from the densest volcanic rock, cool against his back. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and even, a deliberate rhythm cultivated through years of rigorous training. He was still young, perhaps only 18 cycles of the galactic calendar. Yet his spirit held an ancient weight, tempered by the iron will of his master, Darth Kalis. Valerius was not asleep, not truly. He was hovering in that liminal space between wakefulness and dream, a state Master Kalis often encouraged for deep contemplation and the subtle absorption of the Force's lessons. The air in his chamber was cool, carrying a faint, metallic tang, and the distant, low thrum of the Citadel's power conduits resonated through the very stone. A rhythmic pulse that beat against his bones, a dark heartbeat for a dark place. He could feel it, not just hear it, but feel it vibrating through him, becoming a part of him. This fortress, high above the churning, tempestuous atmosphere of a world known only as Xylos 7, was a crucible. It was here, within its unyielding walls, that Valerius was being forged, shaped by shadow and tempered by the raw power of the dark side. His thoughts drifted, not wandering aimlessly, but guided by an unseen current, much like a lone starship navigating through the nebulae, following a pre-programmed course. He thought of the lessons of the day, lessons that were not of combat, nor of overt aggression, but of control. Master Kalis had spoken at length about the nature of fear. Fear, his master's voice, a low rumble even in Valerius's memory, had echoed in the grand training hall, is not merely an emotion to be embraced. It is a fundamental truth of the galaxy, Valerius. It is a tool. It is a key. And only by truly understanding its depths, its nuances, can one wield it with precision, like a master artisan shapes a delicate piece of plasteel, or a grand strategist moves the pieces on a galactic map. Valerius had spent hours, days contemplating this. He had been taught to reach inward, to find the tiny, dormant sparks of fear within himself, the fear of failure, the fear of inadequacy, the primal fear of the unknown. And then, instead of repressing them, he was to acknowledge them. Not to be consumed by them, but to observe them, to understand their origins, their effects. It was a strange, almost contradictory lesson, for the Jedi spoke of casting out fear. But the Sith, Master Kalis insisted, mastered it. They did not let fear master them. They turned it upon others, a weapon, or they transmuted it, within themselves, into a cold, hard resolve, a fuel for power. He inhaled deeply, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, and as he exhaled, he imagined releasing any lingering fear, not into oblivion, but into a controlled reservoir within his own being, a wellspring of potential energy. It was a peculiar sensation, like holding a highly volatile substance in a perfectly sealed container. The danger was there, the power was undeniable, but the control was absolute. This was the peace the Sith spoke of, not a calm born of tranquility, but a stillness born of absolute control over one's inner chaos. The hum of the Citadel seemed to deepen, vibrating through his very bones, a soothing resonance. Valerius allowed his mind to drift further, sinking into the currents of the Force that flowed through the very structure of the fortress. He felt the cold, hard stone beneath him, the ancient circuits embedded within the walls, the distant, muffled echoes of other apprentices, other chambers, other lives. He felt the immense power generator at the core of the Citadel, a pulsating heart of energy that fed every light, every system, every defense. And beyond that, stretching out into the dark void of space, he felt the vast, silent expanse of the galaxy itself, teeming with life, with emotions, with potential. He imagined himself as a single drop of water in an immense, dark ocean. And yet, This drop of water possessed a will, a purpose. It was not to be lost in the ocean, but to command a current, to stir the depths. The dark side was this ocean vast, unknowable in its entirety, yet permeable, responsive to a trained will. It flowed through everything, connecting all life, all matter, all despair and all ambition. And Valerius, through the teachings of Darth Kalis, was learning to navigate its currents, to harness its immense, untamed power. He remembered another lesson from Master Kalis, delivered under the flickering red glow of the Citadel's deep archives, surrounded by holocrons humming with forbidden knowledge. The Force, Kalis had said, his voice quiet but resonating with power, is a river, Valerius. The Jedi seek to dam it, to control its flow to their narrow, preordained channels of light. But the dark side is the river unchained, its true, primordial power unleashed. Carves mountains, it creates chasms, it reshapes the very landscape of the galaxy. Do not seek to merely use it, Valerius. Seek to become it, to flow with its currents, to embody its destructive and creative potential. This was the allure, the quiet promise that had drawn Valerius deeper into the Sith path, ever since he had been found as a young, Force-sensitive child on a forgotten world. Not the promise of overt violence, though that was part of the power. No, it was the promise of mastery. Mastery over oneself, mastery over others, mastery over the very fabric of existence. It was the ultimate freedom, they said, the freedom to define one's own destiny, to break the chains of fate and morality that bound weaker beings. He focused on the rhythmic pulse of the Citadel, allowing it to synchronize with his own slow, steady heartbeat. With each beat, he imagined a tendril of dark energy extending from the core of the fortress, through the stone, through the air, and into his own being. It was a subtle connection, like the invisible threads of a spiderweb, but infinitely strong. He felt the ancient power, the accumulated despair and ambition of generations of Sith Lords who had walked these very halls, who had meditated in chambers much like his own. Their echoes, their dark legacies, were imprinted upon the very air. Valerius found comfort in this. Unlike the chaotic, often overwhelming sensory input of a bustling city, or the unpredictable wildness of nature, the Citadel was a place of ordered, disciplined darkness. Every shadow had its purpose, every hum its function. It was a reflection of the Sith ideal. Power, yes, but power wielded with absolute control, absolute precision. His mind continued to float, effortlessly, through the vastness of his own consciousness. He pictured the star map in the Citadel's command center, a holographic projection of the galaxy, shimmering with countless stars, each representing a world, a civilization, a potential target, a potential conquest. So much chaos out there, so much disorder, so much waste. The Sith believed they offered order, a harsh, unyielding order, but order nonetheless. And it would be enforced by beings like him, beings who understood the true nature of power. As he drifted deeper, the line between thought and sensation blurred. He felt the subtle shift in the air pressure, the faint scent of ozone that sometimes accompanied powerful Force emanations. He felt the distant, almost imperceptible hum of the Master's own meditations, resonating from his personal sanctum deeper within the Citadel. Master Kalis was a beacon in the dark side, a nexus of chilling power. To be near him was to be subtly influenced, to be drawn deeper into the currents of the Force, much like a small moon caught in the gravitational pull of a colossal gas giant. Valerius breathed out slowly, releasing any lingering tension in his jaw, his shoulders. He felt the coolness of the stone against his skin, the comforting weight of the darkness around him. The Obsidian Citadel was his world, his universe, for now. Its secrets were his to uncover, its power his to master. And with each passing cycle, with each whispered lesson from his formidable master, he felt himself growing stronger, more capable, more attuned to the subtle, seductive voice of the dark side. He wasn't fighting sleep, but rather embracing it as another state of consciousness to be explored, to be utilized. Dreams, Master Kalis had often said, were unguarded doorways to the subconscious, to the raw, untamed aspects of the Force. To learn to lucidly navigate one's dreams was to learn to navigate the very fabric of reality, to bend it to one's will. As Valerius finally began to succumb to the embrace of true sleep, his last conscious thought was of a singular, perfect red. Not the vibrant, aggressive red of a Jedi's anger, but the deep, resonant, almost comforting crimson of a fully activated Sith lightsaber blade, held steady, without tremor, by a hand of absolute control. It hummed in his mind, a silent, powerful song. And with that gentle hum, the young apprentice drifted deeper into the obsidian whispers of the night, ready for whatever secrets his dreams might reveal. The dark fortress watched over him, a silent guardian, a profound cradle of power. Let the quiet darkness embrace you now, just as it embraced Valerius, and guide you gently into your own peaceful slumber. Rest now. The transition from deep sleep to the threshold of wakefulness within the Sith Citadel was always a gradual, almost ethereal process for Valerius. There was no jarring alarm, no sudden influx of light or sound. Instead, the subtle changes in the Citadel's ambient hum, the barely perceptible shift in the pressure of the air, and the slow, deliberate fading of his dreamscape served as his internal clock. He awoke, not with a jolt, but with a quiet, mindful unfolding of consciousness, as if a tightly furled blossom were slowly unfurling its petals to the morning sun, except here, the sun was the perpetual twilight of his chamber, illuminated only by the faint, crimson glow emanating from concealed light panels. He lay for a long moment, allowing the afterglow of his dreams to dissipate. Tonight's dreams had been less about abstract concepts and more about raw, primal energy. He had seen himself standing on a precipice, not of a mountain, but of a vast, churning ocean of dark energy, stretching infinitely beneath him. And from this ocean, tendrils of black lightning had arced into his outstretched hands, not harming him, but invigorating him, filling him with a power that vibrated through every cell of his being. It was a vision of controlled chaos, of raw might channeled with precision, a testament to Master Kalus's teachings that power, truly wielded, was not just about destruction, but about absolute command over forces that would otherwise overwhelm. As he slowly pushed himself upright on the meditation slab, the cool, smooth obsidian felt grounding. The low, rhythmic thrum of the citadel was now a familiar, almost comforting presence, a lullaby of power that had accompanied his sleep. He breathed deeply, inhaling the cool, metallic-tinged air, and exhaled slowly, purging any remaining inertia from his mind and body. This ritualistic awakening was as much a part of his training as any lightsaber drill or philosophical discourse. It was about achieving a state of complete self-awareness, a mastery over the most fundamental transition of consciousness. Today's training, he knew, would likely involve practical application of the philosophies discussed yesterday. Master Kalus rarely separated theory from practice. The two were interwoven strands of the same dark tapestry. Valerius rose with a fluid, silent motion, his limbs moving with a grace born of countless hours of physical conditioning and force-enhanced training. He walked to the center of his chamber, where a faint, circular indentation marked the precise spot for his morning exercises. He began, not with strenuous exertion, but with a series of slow, deliberate stretches, each movement perfectly controlled, designed to awaken every muscle, every sinew, every nerve ending. He felt the subtle crackle of energy beneath his skin, the nascent power of the dark side responding to his gentle summons. With each stretch, he visualized tendrils of the Force extending from his core, along his limbs, into his very fingertips and toes, preparing his body to be a conduit, a vessel. This was not a mindless routine. It was a meditation in motion, a physical manifestation of his mental discipline. As his body loosened, he moved into the opening stances of Form 7, Juyo, a lightsaber form known for its aggressive, unpredictable nature, but also for its profound connection to the dark side. He did not ignite his saber, not yet. This was a dry run, a mental rehearsal, a communion with the concept of the blade. His hands moved through the intricate parries, the sweeping strikes, the sudden, explosive lunges, all in slow motion, each movement imbued with deliberate intent. He imagined the hum of the blade, the sizzle of energy, the precise weight and balance of the hilt in his grip. He focused on the flow of the force through his body, guiding his movements, making them faster, stronger, more devastating than any mere physical exertion could achieve. Master Kalis had taught him that the lightsaber was not merely a weapon. It was an extension of the wielder's will, a conduit for their power, a mirror of their inner state. A Jedi's blade, Kalis had once sneered, is a leash. A Sith's blade is a lightning bolt, unleashed by a storm and guided by an iron hand. Valerius sought that perfect control, that seamless integration of weapon, will, and the dark side. He practiced the intricate footwork, the precise wrist flicks, the sudden changes in direction, each motion rehearsed countless times until it flowed with effortless grace. He moved like a shadow, swift and silent, even without the blade's hum. The air in the chamber, usually still, stirred faintly around him as he moved, a testament to the subtle energies he was already channeling. He felt the connection to the ancient Force users who had practiced within these very walls, their echoes resonating through the stone, joining him in this silent dance. There was a peculiar sense of belonging in this, a link across time to generations of Sith who had walked the path of power before him. It was a cold comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. After an hour of these fluid, silent forms, Valerius paused, his breathing only slightly elevated. He stood perfectly still, his senses reaching out, feeling the texture of the air, the faint, distant sounds of the citadel, the deep, abiding presence of the dark side that permeated everything. And then, he felt it, a distinct, subtle shift in the force, a gentle but unmistakable summons from Master Kalis. It was not a voice, not a direct command, but an impression, a deep-seated knowing that his presence was requested in the Master's personal sanctum. He made his way through the dimly lit corridors, the polished black walls reflecting his own shadowed form like still water. The citadel was vast, labyrinthine, a testament to the immense power and meticulous planning of its builders. Every intersection, every archway, every subtle curve in the architecture seemed designed to funnel energy, to guide the unwary, to contain the immense power within. Valerius knew these paths intimately, his footsteps silent on the cold stone floor. Upon reaching the entrance to Master Kalis's sanctum, heavy, blast-proof doors of solid durasteel, Valerius paused. There was no need to knock, no need for a vocal announcement. The Master already knew he was there. The doors slid open with a soft, pneumatic hiss, revealing a chamber far grander, and yet just as Spartan, as Valerius's own. At its center, seated upon a low, dark throne carved from what looked like solidified shadow, was Darth Kalis. Kalis was a figure of quiet, immense power. His robes were of the deepest black, obscuring his form, and his face, ancient and lined with the wisdom of countless years, was a study in serene intensity. His eyes, the color of molten gold, seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality, seeing not just what was, but what could be. He raised a hand, not in greeting, but in a gesture that silently commanded Valerius to approach and kneel. Valerius did so, sinking gracefully to one knee before his master, his head bowed in respect and submission. He felt the cold, immense power radiating from Kalis, a steady, overwhelming presence that nonetheless felt strangely calming, like standing in the eye of a silent, perfectly controlled hurricane. "Rise, apprentice." Kalis's voice was a low murmur, yet it filled the chamber, resonating in Valerius's chest. "Your presence is felt. Your discipline noted." Valerius rose, standing attentively before his master. He waited, as was customary, for Kalis to speak first, to outline the day's lesson, the next step on his arduous journey to mastery. "Today, Valerius," Kalis began, his golden eyes fixed on the young apprentice, "we delve deeper into the art of influence. The Jedi believe in crude, overt displays of the Force pushing, pulling, throwing, leaping. They are like infants screaming for attention. True power, however, lies in the unseen, the unheard, the unacknowledged. It is the art of the whisper, not the roar. Valerius listened intently, absorbing every word. This was the essence of the Sith philosophy. He found most compelling the subtle manipulation, the invisible chains, the silent dominion. Consider the minds of others, Valerius, Kahless continued, gesturing with a slow, deliberate sweep of his hand, as if encompassing the entire galaxy. They are chaotic, filled with doubts, desires, fears, like uncultivated gardens, overgrown and wild. The Jedi seek to cultivate these gardens with their sterile light, to prune them into conformity. But we, Valerius, we do not prune. We seed. We plant the whispers of doubt, the tendrils of ambition, the blossoms of fear. And then, we let them grow, nurtured by their own inherent darkness, until they choke out all resistance. Kahless paused, allowing his words to sink in. Your task today is to reach out, not with overt power, but with subtle intent. The Citadel, vast as it is filled with minds. The service droids, the lower-level operatives, even the distant echoes of creatures in the lower levels. They are all connected, however faintly, to the living force. Your objective is to influence one of them. Not to command, not to overtly control, but to nudge. To plant a suggestion so subtle, so interwoven with their own thoughts, that they believe it to be their own. Valerius felt a ripple of excitement, a cold thrill, run through him. This was the kind of challenge he relished, far more intricate than simple combat. It required immense focus, absolute precision, and a profound understanding of the inner workings of the mind. Find a service droid, Kahless instructed, his voice now a low, hypnotic drone. One of the sanitation units, perhaps. They move through the outer sectors with such predictable monotony. Reach out. Do not command it to turn left when it should turn right. Instead, plant the desire to turn left. A fleeting impulse, a tiny deviation, that it believes is simply a malfunction or a momentary whim of its programming. Can you do this, Valerius? Yes, Master, Valerius replied, his voice firm, his mind already racing with the implications. Good. Find your solitude. Connect. And remember, the greatest power is not that which is seen, but that which is unseen. The true master of the Force does not merely move objects. He moves minds. He changes destinies. He shapes reality, one subtle whisper at a time. Valerius bowed deeply, then turned and exited the sanctum, the heavy doors hissing shut behind him. He walked through the silent corridors, the master's words echoing in his mind, feeling the immense weight of the task, but also the thrilling challenge. He chose a quiet, rarely used section of the Citadel, a maintenance tunnel that ran deep beneath the training halls. The air here was thicker, filled with the faint scent of lubricants and ozone, and the hum of machinery was closer, more resonant. He found a secluded alcove, deep enough to block out any stray sensory input, and settled into a meditative stance, closing his eyes. He reached out with the Force not as an outward explosion but as an inward expansion. He felt the vast network of the Citadel's systems, the hum of the droids, the faint, almost imperceptible echoes of life maintenance crews, security forces, even the occasional vermin scurrying in the pipes. He focused on the droids. Their consciousness was rudimentary, digital, but still present in the Force in its own way. He found a distant sanitation droid, tirelessly moving through a long, empty corridor, its cleaning brushes whirring softly. It was a perfect target. Unobtrusive, predictable, and with a limited range of programming, making any subtle deviation more noticeable even to itself. Valerius began to extend his mind, a fine, almost invisible thread of the Force, reaching across the distance. He did not seek to push the droid's programming. Instead, he sought to implant a suggestion. He imagined the thought, turn left, not as a command, but as a flicker of insight, a sudden, inexplicable urge arising from within the droid's own rudimentary processing unit. It was like planting a seed of an idea in fertile soil, rather than forcing a fully grown plant into barren ground. He focused on the droid's internal sensors, its pathfinding algorithms, its simple decision-making processes. He felt the cold logic of its programming, its unwavering adherence to its designated route. And then, slowly, patiently, he began to weave a faint, almost imperceptible pattern of suggestion into the fabric of its digital consciousness. It was like a gentle breeze nudging a single leaf, not tearing it from the branch, but subtly altering its trajectory. Minutes stretched into an eternity of intense concentration. Valerius's brow furrowed, but his breathing remained steady, his body perfectly still. He poured all his focus, all his intent, into this single subtle act of influence. He pictured the droid approaching a junction, its internal navigation system calculating its programmed right turn. And then he imagined the subtle whisper, the almost imperceptible impulse, guiding its virtual sensors to perceive the left path as suddenly, inexplicably, more efficient, more logical, more desirable. He felt a faint ripple in the force, a response from the distant droid. It was slight, almost negligible, but it was there. A hesitation, a momentary pause in its programmed rhythm. And then the droid, instead of continuing its programmed path to the right, slowly, deliberately turned left. It was a tiny, inconsequential deviation in the grand scheme of the Citadel, but for Valerius it was a profound victory. He had not coerced, he had influenced. He had not commanded, he had inspired a choice. He slowly withdrew his mental presence, feeling the faint fatigue that came from such precise, concentrated force work. He opened his eyes, feeling the cool, silent air of the maintenance tunnel around him. He had done it. A single, almost invisible whisper had altered the reality of a programmed machine. It was a small step, but a potent demonstration of the power of unseen influence, of the true subtle dominion that Master Kalis spoke of. A profound sense of quiet satisfaction settled over Valerius. This was the path. This was the mastery, not of brute force but of insidious, pervasive control. He allowed his senses to expand outward once more, feeling the vast, silent presence of the Citadel, now almost an extension of himself. The hum of its power, the coldness of its stone, the omnipresent whispers of the dark side, they no longer felt external. They were within him, a part of him, flowing through his veins, empowering his will. As the quiet darkness of the Citadel settled around him once more, Valerius walked back to his chamber, the gentle hum of the fortress now a comforting thrum against his chest. The secrets of the Sith were not always loud and violent. Often, they were silent, subtle, and profoundly effective. He lay back down on his obsidian slab, ready for the next cycle of learning, for the next layer of shadow to be unveiled. The power flowed within him, quiet and deep, like a hidden river. And with that sense of controlled power, of quiet anticipation for the future, the young apprentice Valerius drifted once more into a deep, peaceful sleep, ready for the whispers of tomorrow. Let the profound stillness of the dark side embrace you now, a quiet blanket of control and calm, as you too drift into the serenity of your own dreams. Rest well.